The morning I looked at a woman who had given up and refused to let her in. 38 years on this bench in Albuquerque, New Mexico, I have made thousands of rulings. Some were easy. Some kept me awake for nights afterward. Some I am still not entirely sure I got right. But I want to tell you about the Monday morning that a woman named Gloria Reyes sat down in front of me, folded her hands on the table, and said something so quiet and so devastating that every other sound in that courtroom simply stopped. She said, "Your Honor, it doesn't matter what you decide. Nothing changes anyway." 7 words. And in 38 years, no one has ever said anything that hit me harder than that. If you believe that the most important thing a courtroom can do is remind a person that they still matter, subscribe right now. Because what happened after those 7 words is something I will carry for the rest of my life. It was a Monday in October, the kind of New Mexico morning where the sky is so blue it almost hurts to look at it, and the air carries the smell of something clean and distant. The mountains to the east are purple at that hour. It is a beautiful place, this city, and beauty, I have always believed, has no interest in your problems. It simply continues being beautiful regardless. I had been on the bench since 8:15. My clerk, a man named Samuel, who has worked beside me for 12 years and whose judgment I trust completely, had handed me the morning docket at 8 o'clock with his usual efficiency and his usual silence. He had, however, marked one file, not with a note. Samuel does not write notes. He had folded the corner of the page down, a small triangle, barely noticeable. In 12 years, he had never done that before. I looked at the file. Respondent, Gloria Reyes, 44. Charge, failure to appear. Original citation, expired vehicle registration, $120. Accumulated late penalties, $340. Total owed, $460. I looked at the folded corner. I looked at Samuel. He was already back at his desk. I walked out to the bench. When Samuel called her name, Gloria Reyes stood up from the back row of the gallery. I noticed her immediately, not because of anything dramatic, because of the opposite of drama, because she moved through that room the way someone moves when they have stopped expecting anything from it, steadily, quietly, without the nervous energy most people carry when they approach this bench. She was 44 years old, medium height, dark hair pulled back simply. She wore a gray sweater and dark jeans. Her shoes were clean but worn at the heel. She carried a small canvas bag over one shoulder, held close to her body. She sat down at the respondent's table and she folded her hands in front of her. She did not look around the room. She did not look at the gallery. She looked at the table. And I noticed, before she had said a single word, before I had asked a single question, that she was not frightened. She was not nervous. She was not hopeful. She was empty. I have been doing this long enough to know the difference. Fear has an energy to it, even when it is quiet. Nervousness fidgets. Hope leans forward. Gloria Reyes sat with a stillness that had no energy in it at all. The stillness of someone who has stopped leaning, stopped expecting, stopped. That stillness is the thing that worries me most when I see it in this room. I said, "Good morning, Ms. Reyes." She said, "Good morning. You're here today on a failure to appear for an original citation, expired vehicle registration. The total with accumulated penalties is $460. Is that correct?" "Yes." "Can you tell me why you missed your original court date?" She looked up at me for the first time. Her eyes were not red. She had not been crying. They were simply flat in the way eyes go flat when a person has cried so much for so long that the tears have run out. She said, "I forgot." I said, "You forgot?" "Yes, I had a lot going on. I forgot." I have heard that explanation many times. Usually it is accompanied by some embarrassment, some apology. Usually a person says it and then adds something, tries to fill the silence after it. Gloria Reyes did not fill the silence. She said it, and she stopped, as if the fact of forgetting was simply one more small thing in a long list of things she no longer had energy to explain. I said, "Ms. Reyes, are you able to pay the $460 today?" She looked at the table again. She said, "No." "Is there a payment arrangement that would work for you?" She was quiet for a moment. Then she said it, the 7 words. "Your Honor, it doesn't matter what you decide. Nothing changes anyway." The courtroom went very still, not the polite stillness of procedure, the deeper stillness of people who have heard something that cuts through the ordinary noise of a day and touches something underneath. Samuel at his desk had gone completely motionless. My bailiff, a woman named Carla, who has been in this building for 16 years and who I have never once seen rattled, looked up from the door. I kept my expression steady. I have 40 years of practice at that. But inside, something had shifted, the way things shift when a truth lands before you had a chance to prepare for it. I said, very gently, "Ms. Reyes, can I ask you something?" She looked at me. "What is going on in your life right now?" Something moved across her face. It was brief and complicated. The expression of a person who has been asked that question by no one for a very long time and is not sure what to do with it. She said, "I don't think that's relevant to a registration ticket." I said, "Humor me. I've been doing this for 38 years. I find that the ticket is almost never the whole story." She looked at me for a moment, measuring something, deciding something. Then she began to speak. She said she had worked for 11 years as an office manager for a small construction company on the south side of the city. In February, the company had closed, abruptly. The owner had not given notice. She had arrived one morning to find the locks changed and a notice on the door. She said she had applied for 43 jobs since February. She knew the number exactly. She had a spreadsheet. 43 applications, 11 responses, 4 interviews, no offers. She said she was 53 days behind on her rent. Her landlord had been patient, but patience has a limit, and she could feel his reaching it. She said her car registration had expired because she had needed to choose between the registration fee and her daughter's school supplies in September. She had chosen the school supplies. She said her daughter was 12. Her name was Isabel. She said Isabel did not know how bad things were. She had made certain of that. She said she had missed the original court date because that was the same week she had applied for the last 7 jobs on her list and had been rejected by all 7 in the same 5-day span. And something in her had simply stopped working the way it was supposed to work. And she had looked at the court notice on her kitchen table and thought, "One more thing I cannot fix." And she had put it face down and not looked at it again. She said all of this in the same quiet, flat voice. Not performing, not asking for anything, just answering the question she had been asked. When she finished, she looked at the table. She said, "I'm sorry, that was more than you needed." I said, "No, it was exactly what I needed." I want to tell you what I was thinking in that moment. I was thinking about the phrase, "Nothing changes anyway." I have heard people say that before in this room, usually in anger, usually in frustration at a system that has let them down repeatedly. There is fire in it when people say it that way. Gloria Reyes had said it without fire. She had said it the way a person states a fact they have accepted, a fact they are no longer fighting. That is different. That is much more serious than anger. Anger is still connected. Anger still believes there is something worth being angry at. Anger means a person has not yet given up on the idea that things could be different. What I heard in Gloria Reyes's voice was not anger. It was the sound of a person who would stop believing that the world would respond to her efforts, who had applied for 43 jobs and heard back from 11 and been offered none, and had somewhere along the way reached the conclusion that trying did not produce results and had therefore quietly, privately, without making a scene about it, stopped expecting results. That is not laziness. That is not weakness. That is what happens to a human being when the world fails to respond to their efforts for long enough. Something goes quiet inside them. Some signal stops transmitting. My job in that moment was not to rule on a registration fee. My job was to transmit a signal back. I said, "Ms. Reyes, I want to say something to you, and I want you to hear it." She looked at me. "You have been carrying something very heavy for a very long time, alone, and you have been doing it while making sure your 12-year-old daughter doesn't know how heavy it is. Do you understand what that requires?" She didn't answer. "That requires extraordinary strength, the kind most people don't have, the kind you do not get credit for because you are doing it in private, by design, so that Isabel doesn't have to carry it too." Something shifted in her face, small, barely visible, but there. "You are not someone who stopped trying," I said. "You are someone whose trying has not yet been met with what it deserves. Those are not the same thing, and I need you to hear that difference." Her jaw moved. She pressed her lips together. I said, "Can I ask you something else?" She nodded. "The spreadsheet, the one with the 43 applications. You still have it?" "Yes." "You kept tracking even after February, even after the rejections started. You kept the spreadsheet." She looked at me with something in her eyes that had not been there before. Not quite understanding yet, but something waking up. I said, "A person who has given up does not keep a spreadsheet, Ms. Reyes. A person who has given up stops counting. You kept counting. That tells me something important about who you actually are, underneath the exhaustion." The room was completely quiet. I heard from somewhere in the gallery. I did not look up. I did not want to break the moment. The very soft sound of someone breathing carefully, the kind of careful breathing that means a person is working to hold something together. Gloria Reyes looked at me, and for the first time since she had walked into my courtroom, something in her face moved towards something other than empty. Her eyes filled. She did not let it become crying. She held it, but the emptiness was gone. Something had come back into those eyes, something that had been switched off and was switching back on. She said, very quietly, "No one has said that to me in a long time." I said, "I know, and I am sorry for that. You should have heard it sooner." I made my ruling. I said, "Ms. Reyes, all accumulated late penalties, $340, are waived completely. You owe only the original $120 registration fee, and I am giving you a 90-day extension with no additional penalties to pay that amount. That gives you time to stabilize without this adding to your pressure." She blinked. "Your Honor, I'm not finished." She waited. "Samuel," I said. Samuel came to the bench. He had been ready. He had the paper in his hand before I asked for it, which told me he had been expecting this, which told me that in 12 years he had learned to read me as well as I had learned to read the people in front of me. He handed me the list. I said, "This is a list of employment resources in Albuquerque specifically for experienced administrative and office management professionals. There is a workforce development program at the community college that works directly with local businesses, not job boards, direct placements. There is a legal aid organization that can advise you on tenant rights, given your situation with your landlord. And there is an emergency rental assistance program that has funds available. I want you to take this today, not tomorrow, today." I held it out toward her. She stood. She walked up and took it with both hands. She looked at it for a moment. She said, "I didn't know these existed." "Most people don't," I said. "They're too busy trying to handle everything alone to go looking." I paused. "Ms. Reyes, one more thing." She looked at me. "I want you to go home today and tell Isabel that things are hard right now. Not everything, not more than she can carry, but something true. Tell her you are working on it. Tell her she has a mother who kept a spreadsheet through all of it." Her face crumpled, just for a moment. Then she pulled it back. She said, "She'll worry. She is 12 years old," I said gently. "She already knows something is wrong. Children always know. Right now she is carrying her worry alone because she thinks you are carrying yours alone. Let her know she doesn't have to. You don't have to be invisible to protect her." The sound from the gallery was less careful now. Gloria Reyes looked at me for a long moment. Something steady and real had come back into her face. Not happiness. That was not what this moment called for. Something more durable than happiness. She said, "Thank you, Your Honor." I said, "Thank you for answering my questions honestly." That took courage. She nodded once. Then she turned and walked back through the gallery. I noticed as she passed the rows that several people watched her go, in the particular way people watch someone they have briefly but genuinely recognized. A man in the third row, perhaps 60, in work clothes, gave her a single nod as she passed. She saw it. She nodded back. That exchange, small and wordless, between two strangers in a courtroom on a Monday morning in October, is something I still think about. Samuel came to my office during the lunch recess. He stood in the doorway and said, simply, "The Workforce Development Program at the college. They have a session starting next week." I called. "They have open spots." I said, "Did you leave them her name?" He said, "I left them her name and her number from the file. They'll call her this afternoon." I looked at him. He looked back with the composed expression of a man who has made a judgment call and is at peace with it. I said, "Samuel." He said, "Judge." That was the whole conversation. But it was enough. 6 weeks later, a card arrived at the courthouse. Plain white envelope, neat handwriting on the outside. My name, my title, the court address. Inside, 2 things. The first was a short note, 8 sentences. She had been contacted by the Workforce Development Program the same afternoon as her court appearance. She had attended the first session the following Tuesday. 3 weeks later, she had been placed in an interview with a property management company on the east side of the city that needed an office manager. She had been hired. She started the following Monday. The salary was not what she had made before, but it was enough. She was current on rent. She had told Isabel. The second thing in the envelope was a drawing, done in colored pencil. A courtroom, simplified the way children simplify things. A large rectangle of a room, a bench at the front, 2 figures, one large figure in a robe, one smaller figure at a table. Above the large figure in careful 12-year-old handwriting, the judge. Above the smaller figure, my mom. Between them, drawn in yellow, the color of something warm, the color a child reaches for when they mean something good, a single line connecting the 2 figures. No label on the line, no explanation, just the line. I looked at that drawing for a long time. Then I put it where I put the things that matter. I want to tell you what Gloria Reyes taught me, or reminded me, because the best lessons always come back around, and the people who deliver them are almost never the people you expected. She reminded me that despair is not the absence of effort. It is what happens to effort when it goes unanswered for too long. She had tried 43 times. She had kept a spreadsheet. She had protected her daughter from the weight of it. She had shown up to my courtroom on a Monday morning, even after she had decided it would not matter. That is not someone who stopped trying. That is someone whose trying had stopped being reflected back. My job, when someone like Gloria Reyes walks into my courtroom, is not only to apply the law, it is to reflect something back, to say, I see the spreadsheet, I see the protected daughter, I see the worn heels and the gray sweater and the 43 attempts. I see who you are underneath the exhaustion, and who you are is someone who deserves to be told the truth about themselves. The truth about Gloria Reyes was not, nothing changes anyway. The truth was, she had been changing things, tirelessly, invisibly, for 8 months. She had just not yet been met with change in return. Sometimes all a person needs is one morning when the world responds. My father used to say that hope is not a feeling, it is a decision. You cannot always feel hopeful, but you can decide to act as though the next thing you try might be the thing that works. You can decide to send the 44th application, to walk into the courtroom even when you have told yourself it will not matter. Gloria Reyes made that decision every day for 8 months. I am grateful I was there the morning the world finally responded. If this story reached something in you, I want to hear from you. Leave me a comment. Tell me about a time when you felt like Gloria Reyes, like trying was not producing anything. And tell me, if you're willing, what happened next. What got you through it, or who? Because those stories matter. They matter to the people who are in the middle of their 43rd application right now, reading comments at midnight, wondering if the 44th is worth it. Tell them it is. Share this with someone who needs to hear that today. And if you know someone who looks the way Gloria Reyes looked when she walked into my courtroom, quietly empty, quietly stopped, ask them how they are, not in passing, a real question with real time behind it. You might be the signal they have been waiting for. God bless you, Gloria. God bless Isabel and her yellow crayon. God bless all of you, wherever you are watching from. I'll see you next week.